Hello everyone, we are here in the cockpit of a Boeing 737 NG. It's the previous version of the MAX we are going to talk about today. This video addresses questions from former interns and participants of the Fear of Flying course. I have next to me a pilot who is qualified on the Boeing 737, but unfortunately who is not allowed to appear on the image, so we will pretend that it's me who is piloting. We're going to start rolling on this runway, so we're at Roissy. You can put on the gas, we're going to accelerate gently. And we're going to take off just to show you what happened and also answer some questions and some mistakes. We hear about how this system activates, what its consequences are, and how the pilots could have countered it. Because one element that is quite recurrent in the communication of Boeing and American pilots, it's the fact that in reality this failure, if it occurs, that is to say if the MK triggers inappropriately and puts the plane in descent, the communication of Boeing and American authorities so far, it was to say that this failure and is easy to manage because it resembles and it produces the same consequences as any other type of failure. And basically the answer is, at your place, in your car, when you drive, if you have a brake problem, you're going to activate the handbrake. You won't question whether the issue lies with the brake fluid, brake pad, or the ABS system. And so the Boeing engineers had said from the moment the system activates, it causes a situation that resembles another one, for which pilots have been trained since the 60s, and a plane called the Boeing 707, which had a compensation system. So here we are aligned on the runway, we will gradually accelerate, all this is optimal, then again we are on the previous version and a flight simulator of a previous version of the Boeing 737 MAX. In terms of piloting, there's hardly any visual difference as it's extremely close. This plane is not equipped with the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, which is therefore implicated in the accidents. We will simulate and reproduce this situation. We gradually accelerate, so here we indicate the power that we want to display. We have the engines that gradually accelerate. The throttle, we display about 90% thrust. All parameters are good and in the green. The speed is displayed in front of me. We have here small indications that give us the speed, what we call 5-1, 5R, so the rotation speed, the speed from which we can take off. I'll let you pull. We take an angle of rotation with a climb angle below 15 degrees. I'll let you do it. I'm at 12.5. There you go. The altitude is rising on the side, reaching 500 to 600 feet. Here we have an interesting element, the compensator. In other words, in an airplane, to avoid pulling the control stick in a heavy position, we have this system that will activate more or less automatically so that the pilot's rest position is the climbing position and we don't have to continuously put force into his stick like that. So now we're reaching 1500 feet. At this altitude we reach a speed that allows us to change angle. We will continue to accelerate and we will retract the flaps. So the flaps are this part here. It's the part that is at the back of the wing and allows for more lift at low speed. So now we are retracting them, and so the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, the system in question, at this point its objective is to protect the plane against a situation that can be dangerous, which we call stalling. That is to say, it will prevent the plane from being too slow with the nose up, and so this protection results in making the plane do what we call a dive. That is to say, it will have an angle that will be more downward, because the plane thinks we are climbing too much and too slow and too slow. If the MK activates in the simulation, it will have consequences for the plane. Goes into descent, so the pilots try at first to pull on the stick or even with the button. I should not lean too much on the hand here. We will flatten out on the hand. We have a button to compensate for the system going into descent. I can pull on it to compensate. It will clearly cause it to turn the other way. But it's an action that doesn't disinhibit the MCAS, the one that will simply counter it for a few seconds. However, the MCAS, which had defective probes in Yannick's crash, reactivates and restarts every 5 seconds. to reactivate, to start descending again, so the pilots continue to try to fight to pull on their stick. The stick is getting heavier and heavier. A Boeing 737 stick can weigh up to 88 pounds, making it heavy and difficult to maintain. Pilots compensate by placing their hand on the stick. When diving, they put their hand on it and it will move each time they let go or stop pulling the button. The trim cutout is a way to disconnect this system, as it appears to be a trim runaway failure where the system disconnects itself. So I remove the two protections, we click downwards, the system deactivates. So there we have all the weight, and then normally we take out a crank. And we are obliged to carry out the entire flight by hand, by activating this compensator by hand, since the electric compensator is no longer active at that time. So it's something that is heavy and tedious, which increases the workload of the pilots. But on the previous flights of the Iron Air crash where the failure had occurred, the pilots had managed to handle this situation in this way by activating this button. So contrary to what we've seen in the press, there is no button to disable the maneuvering characteristics augmentation system. It doesn't exist. There is a button to disable the trim, the runaway trim, so to disable this electric compensator that activates inappropriately, but there is no indication on the operation of the maneuvering characteristics augmentation system. However, what will be added here, we have an angle of attack indicator of the angle of arrival of the air on the nose of the plane, which is called the incidence, which tells us that the angle of arrival of the air is about 4.5 degrees. This indication, there is a second one that will now be 2 series on the Boeing 1637 MAX. It will be the indication that the two probes have contradictory information. If two probes have information different by more than 10 degrees of the angle for more than 10 seconds, we have, it's called angle of attack disagree, that will display, and we have the maneuvering characteristics augmentation system that will be deactivated and will no longer put the plane into a dive, as we have seen. So this is one of the evolutions of the protections proposed by Boeing. The second evolution is that the system would only activate once, meaning we no longer have a system that will continue and resume its descent each time. There would only be one. Couple to dive, that would happen only once. It's very nice around Roissy, as you can see, so it would only activate once. We would have an indicator that the probes are possibly faulty, or at least they do not disagree, as we say in French, that they do not agree with each other, and we have the MCAS that is deactivated in this case. There you go. It was short, I hope it was clear. Cut.